Hello. Before I start this talk, if you'd like to build along with me, you need to do a few things. First, you need to have Visual Studio 2015 or newer with the AWS Toolkit for Visual Studio installed. And then make sure you're signed up for an AWS account. If you have one already, great. If not, it's free, but it does require a credit card. So you can go to the URL there, awsamazon.com/account to sign up. And then third, you need to sign up for an Amazon developer account, which is also free at developer.amazon.com. Once you have those installed, please continue on with this video. All right, we're going to build an Alexa skill together using C# and AWS. Before I start, my name is Paul Oliver, and I am the Principal Software Architect at Mosaic, and my Twitter handle is itspaultastic. All right, so we're going to build this Alexa skill, and my plan is first I'll talk about how Alexa works, then we'll create an interactive service with slots. I'll describe what those are in a bit, and then we'll summarize what we learned. Before I get too far down this path, you'll want to unplug your Amazon Echo device because I will be saying the wake word a lot during this talk, and I don't want to annoy your house too much. All right, hoping that you have it unplugged now. Here we go. An Alexa skill is a capability for your Alexa device. There are custom skills like looking up info from a web service, integrating with Uber, Domino's Pizza, that sort of thing, interactive games. Then there are smart home skills. These are skills that turn your lights off in your house, change your thermostat. There's a third skill called flash briefing, but that's beyond the scope of this presentation. Today we're going to be working on a custom skill, and so that will be our focus. Now, an Alexa skill is broken into two parts. There is a skill service, and this is running inside of a service container like AWS Lambda. It can be an Azure function. It can be an HTTPS service. Most of the time, AWS Lambda is where they live. Then on the other half of the skill equation, there is a skill interface. This is the voice user interface configuration you do. These are utterances, slot types, intent schemas. I'll explain what those mean in a bit. Now, the components of a custom skill are a set of intents. These represent actions that users can do with your skill. And then there's a set of sample utterances that specify words and phrases. And you have an invocation name that identifies this skill. And then there is a cloud-based service that accepts these intents and acts on them. This is the C# part that we'll be writing today. And then there's a configuration that combines all this. And this is created in the developer portal. Intents is a way of describing what is actually going to get done with what somebody says. So in this example here, we have a one-shot tied intent, and it's mapped to several sample utterances. In the code there, you see one-shot tied intent, get high tide for city. So when someone says, Alexa, get high tide for Seattle from Tide Pooler, this get high tide for Seattle is a sample utterance. And then Tide Pooler is the invocation name. The invocation name does not have to match the intent. So one-shot tide intent is the intent name, but invocation name is Tide Pooler. And then there's a slot. This is like a variable, so a parameter maybe you could call it. So when someone says, Alexa, get high tide for Seattle from Tide Pooler, Seattle is the slot. When you put your intent and your utterances together along with the slots, this is called the interaction model. This is what we do in the developer portal. So when someone says, Alexa, get high tide for Seattle from Tide Pooler, here's what happens. First, the user's speech is streamed to the Alexa service in the cloud. Then Alexa recognizes that Tide Pooler, that skill, it belongs to one-shot tide intent. Then Alexa structures it into a request and sends a request to the service to find. It knows where to find it. It's either in AWS, the skill could be hosted in Azure Functions, it could be sitting on a server somewhere. The request includes the value Seattle as the city, that's the slot. Then the Tide Pooler service gets the request and takes action. The tide pooler sends Alexa service a structured response with the text to speak to the user, and then optionally a graphical card to show in the user's phone or their mobile app. And then the Alexa-enabled device speaks the response back to the user. There are lots of ways to talk to your Echo device. You could say, Alexa, get high tide for Seattle from Tide Pooler. Or Alexa, ask recipes, how do I make an omelet? Or Alexa, ask Genius about Lil' Kim. Or Alexa, give 10 points to Steven using Scorekeeper. You see those phrases, ask, from, about, using. These are keywords that Alexa will look for and figure out how to parse and handle for the intents. You also can interact with an Alexa skill like a session. You can use it to keep Alexa listening to you as you interact with it. So when I say, Alexa, open Tide Pooler, or Alexa, talk to recipes, Alexa, play Trivia Master, or Alexa, start Scorekeeper. These are all ways to open up a session and then continue working with those intents or those skills as you as you interact with it. And then finally, you can say exit or close to get out of the session. We mentioned earlier that a skill is broken into two parts. Let's break those apart and talk about what they are and how do you manage them. The skill interface is handled in the Amazon Developer Portal. These are your utterances, your slot types, and intent schema. And your skill service is handled in AWS Lambda or a service somewhere, like Azure Functions, HTTPS service, somewhere like that. Today we'll be working with AWS Lambda, so we'll be in the AWS console for that part. When a user says, Alexa, get high tide for Seattle from Tide Pooler, the text is streamed to the service, the Alexa service in the cloud, which then parses the statement and then figures out that this is intended for a service in AWS Lambda or an intent that lives in an Azure function. When it sends the request, it's structured in a way that the request can handle it and say, oh, okay, this person is looking for the high tide for Seattle. And then it sends a response back to the Alexa service, which then gets sent directly to the Alexa device. So let's build our skill. It's called Country Info. Our custom skill will be using C#. It's going to be a .NET Core app. We're going to use some AWS NuGet packages, and then we'll host our service in AWS Lambda. So there'll be a serverless configuration. And then we'll use a REST service that returns only country information for us to interact with, just to kind of simulate how you could use an Alexa service in your own apps. Alexa, ask Country Info about France.
About France. The capital is Paris and the population is 66,710,000.
And that's exactly what our service will sound like when we use it. Here's a preview of what our REST service will look like. It's hosted at restcountries.eu, and that URL works right now, and you can use it too. Please visit that site and donate to the creator, the author of it, if you are interested in using it. All right, the steps we're going to take to build this skill today. We're first going to design a voice user interface. And again, this is on the right-hand side, the utterances, slot types, intent schema. This lives in the developer portal. Then we'll set up the skill just by getting this all glued together. And then finally, we'll write and test the code. This is the C# stuff. This will live in AWS Lambda. We'll be using Visual Studio for this part. Now, to design the voice user interface, the first step is to think of the utterances. What are the things people will say in order to use your skill? In my estimation, people are going to say, Alexa, ask country info for the capital of England. Or Alexa, get the capital of England from country info. These, again, are mapped to utterances. So in the first case, the capital of England is the utterance, the sample phrase. And you can see it highlighted below. When somebody says, get the capital of England, we will say, get the capital of country. That's the variable there. And then when somebody says, ask country info about England is the utterance. We have a few others down there that you can see. we define utterances in the Amazon Developer Portal. It looks just like it shows on the screenshot below. The second thing we need to think about are slots when we are designing our voice user interface. A slot is a variable or a parameter. So in this case, when we say the capital of country, country is a slot. The slot type is what is the type of variable that we're going to be passing in. So I'm not talking like string, float, like normally in programming. What a slot type would be is this a country? Is this a director? Is this a day of the week? Is this a state or a region? You can have thousands of different slot types, and a lot of times they're literal, but there are built-in ones that you can already use, and they are defined at this URL below. One of the slot types I've found listed is Amazon.country, and these are just names of countries around the world. This is perfect for us. So before you decide a type of slot that you want to use in your skill, check that URL below. You might already have the slot type defined, and it's a lot easier to use a defined one than it is to write your own list. Slot types and intent schema, which also kind of go hand in hand with that, they are also defined in the Amazon Developer Portal. So we'll be doing that in the next step. I have a gist already defined, so you can plug and play what we've already used here. But if you go to tinyurl.com/AlexaTalk1, it'll take you to a gist, and you can paste this in. So let's do that right now. So let me go to tinyurl.com/AlexaTalk1. And here we have two files, the intent schema.json and the utterances.txt. And then log into your Amazon Developer Portal, navigate to Alexa Skills Kit, and then after it loads, click on this Add a New Skill button. Here you can define what you're going to use. Let's just fill this in quickly. This will be a custom interaction model, so it's a custom skill. Language is English. The name of this skill is what will show up when they list skills that they can install. I'm going to just call it country info. Invocation name will be country info as well. These do not have to match. I could call this country info by Paul here if you wanted to, something like that, but I just wanted to show you do not have to make those match. And then it's going to ask if you use the audio player skill. This is for playing sound clips. That's not something we're going to need for this skill, so hit next. Then we have the interaction model, and this is where those gists come in. And so here's the intent schema, and let's just copy those from the gist. And just to parse it out here, this is called a country info intent, and the slots are going to be there's only one slot, and it's called name is country, and then it's going to be of type Amazon.country. And then we have a couple other intents. This one's the help intent, so this is where someone can say help, or I don't understand, or I need help, and Amazon will fire this intent, and we'll handle that in our service. And then there's a stop intent. Again, if somebody's interacting with a session, they might say exit or close or stop. We will handle that as well. If you want to define more slot types that are custom, you can come here and add it. If you're having a pizza service or something, we don't need that today, so I'm skipping past it. And then the sample utterances, we will copy them from our gist and we paste them here and click next. Oh, just to show you, these are the utterances that we were talking about earlier. So when I say next, we have now defined the interaction model. At this point, we're ready to open up Visual Studio 2015 or newer, and make sure you have the AWS Toolkit for Visual Studio installed. There's a URL to install it down below. And then just FYI, we are going to be using some code that is stored in a gist, and that way you can follow along, and if you miss some code, that's okay. And so let's go over to Visual Studio now and make sure, again, AWS Toolkit is installed. That's important. And because it is installed, if you go to File, New, Project, you will see some AWS Lambda projects available to you. Just choose the second one down, AWS Lambda Project.NET Core, and let's call it Lambda Alexa. That way the code gists that I'm giving you will work. And I checked those two boxes, but of course that's up to you. And now it's going to give you a second dialog. Just choose empty function. There is not an Alexa project available, template available through that dialog yet. And then once it's done, you're going to notice that the package restore failed error is showing, and this is common, it's expected. If you do see that, just go and rebuild your solution, and that should restore your packages and make sure everything's all in ship shape. Next, we want to add a NuGet package so that you can talk to and understand the Alexa messages. So just right click and do Manage NuGet Packages for Solution, and then type in alexa.net and make sure the Include Pre-Release button is checked. That way you can get the beta versions. And we're going to use this first one, alexa.net by Tim Hewer, and just add it to your project, Lambda Alexa, and click the Install button. After you say OK to the dialogues, everything should be all set for you to dive in and start writing some code. All right, so that is all good. And next we will go to function.cs. So this is an empty function. It will not work with our Alexa service yet. So let's go to our browser and pull up the code for this. Point your browser to tinyurl.com/Alexa talk2, and you will get the first version of our Alexa function. You can just copy all that and then just paste it over the top of function.cs. All right, so just to show what we have here, we have a class of function, and we added two new properties, an HTTP client and then a const string invocation name that we'll use in our responses. And the function handler logic is all in this function handler function on line 34. It takes two parameters, a skill request input, and then the context. And we just figure out what type of request it is on line 37. And if it's a type of an intent request, which is what will happen when somebody says, Alexa, ask country info for that sort of thing, then we are going to respond with Hello Infotech. That's the conference I'll be speaking at this month. Hello Infotech, this is the first response from your Alexa skill using C#. Otherwise, it says, I don't know how to handle this intent. Please say something like, Alexa, ask country info about Canada, just to give them something to work with. If you wanted to look at make skill response, it is fairly simple to follow along here. It has a reprompt text that we send if they wait too long to ask a question. But then the response just has two properties here. The should end session, and that is kicking them out of an interaction session. And then the speech. It's going to be some plain text that we speak to them. And then at the end here, we just need to do some tweaks to the response and then send it on. And then the Alexa service knows what to do with the user. So we save this file that we pasted in, and then let's deploy it. All right, to make sure the deployment works well, go to your AWS Explorer and make sure you're signed in to your AWS account. And if not, you can just add a profile or sign into it with those buttons on the side. Now that we are logged in, I'm going to go to Solution Explorer and then right-click on the project, not the solution, but the project, the Lambda Alexa project, and you will see in the right-click menu a Publish to AWS Lambda option. This pulls up a dialog, and if you are logged into your profile, it will see that the function name is, you can type in whatever name you want to be. So we're going to use a-lmbd-alexa C#. And this is going to be a new function we're going to create. You can choose the configuration, the framework, and those things. Those should all be fine, but really we need the function name here. And then if you click next, you will be able to set a role. And I already have a role here for basic execution, but you probably won't the first time. So I would recommend you use the Lambda basic execution role, because that will allow you to write to the CloudWatch logs. And then for memory, 256 megs is way too much. I don't even need that. I'm going to use 128. And then timeout, you can change that. I'll change it to 20 to, if there's something running a long time, I don't get charged. But I just want to emphasize, you won't get charged for this in the free tier. It's going to, unless you're calling this like a million times a day. As far as VPC subnets, just leave it blank. We aren't going to be needing any private resources, so I'll just leave it the way it is. And, if you did have a private service to call, you'd use a VPC. But we're going to click upload now, and now it's actually publishing this new Lambda function to your AWS account. And then we can test it right here in Visual Studio, which is a cool thing. Might as well use Visual Studio for all it's worth, right? So down here you see Alexa intent, my color is. I'm going to select that, and it just pre-populates with some variables. If I invoke our function with this, I just click invoke, we can see the response. And it's going to, there's a little bit of a delay the first time, and you can see that its text is hello Infotech, this is the first response. And if it said it, you would hear in the developer portal, you actually can hear the text as it said. If I change some things here, like change the intent to country info intent, that will come in handy later. And then for slots, color, name, we're going to say country Canada. We'll invoke it again. It won't change anything here yet, but in our future code revisions it will make a difference. But I just wanted to show you that for now. Okay, so we deployed our function and it's actually returning stuff. Let's go and get the function's ARN so that we can tie it in the developer portal. So let's go to a browser. So the next thing you need to do is get into your AWS console for your account. And here I'm going to do a search for Lambda. And you will find, there it is, Lambda. We're jumping into Lambda. And here is the function that we just deployed from Visual Studio, which is pretty exciting. And you can verify that this is the right function. Look at the name. You can see the configuration, those sorts of things. It is not showing the code because the code is zipped up and sent up to the cloud, but you can verify that we chose 128 megabytes and 20-second timeout. This looks good to me. This ARN here is something that we will need in the developer portal, but we need to do one thing before Lambda calls, or sorry, the Alexa calls are handled here. Go to your triggers tab, and we have no triggers. This basically means it can't be launched from, unless you call it explicitly. Let's add a trigger though, and click on this little box here, and you'll see Alexa Skills Kit listed there, and there's going to be a listing things. You can filter it if you're not seeing it, but choose Alexa Skills Kit and then hit submit, and now you're giving Alexa the permissions to launch this this Lambda function. I mentioned this ARN is important. Let's take this, copy it to your clipboard, and now let's go over to our Amazon developer portal. And if you are following along at home, you'll be on this same screen in your developer portal. This is where you're configuring your Alexa function. So choose AWS Lambda ARN and choose the region that you are in for sure. Paste that ARN in there. You can leave the account linking off and then hit save. So it's saving your function, and then when we're done with that, just click Next. And this is the screen where you can actually start interacting with your Lambda function in your skill. If I say about France and say ask country info, it actually responds back with some text, and then I can listen to it.
Hello, Infotech. This is the first response from your Alexa skill using C#.
All right, so we want to actually listen to what the user sends in as a country. That's the slot. That's the parameter that they pass in. So this is how we're going to read that value passed in from the user. In Visual Studio, go to near the top there, right on line 40, and we're going to take that request and we're going to make it into a variable called intent request. So input request as intent request, and we know it's an intent request because of line 38, where we saw that it is a type of intent request. Then let's just read the country requested from the intent request intent.slots, and it's a dictionary. And then we can change the output to you would like more information about country requested. And you can get this code from tinyurl.com/AlexaTalk3. So save this, and then we are going to publish it and see if it works. Go to our Solution Explorer, click on Lambda Alexa project, publish to AWS Lambda, and we're going to publish the exact same function we did earlier, a Lambda Alexa C#. That's the one we want to go to. Then if you hit next, your role can be the one you used earlier. Choose one that's basic execution, and the memory, I'm going to choose 128 and 20 again. If you are tired of entering those values each time, we will quickly, let's just close this and come over here to your AWS Lambda Tools defaults, and we will update this, change the value here to 128 and function timeout to 20. And while you're in here, you might as well update your other values just in case you need it, and that should do it. And that's what the AWS tooling uses to populate those dialogues. Come back here to the solution dialog. Now I'm going to right click and do publish to AWS Lambda, a Lambda LMDBD Alexa C#. Go to next, and now you see 128 and 20 is there already by default. And I'm going to use my role that I used earlier and hit upload. And we can again test it. This time when we typed in country Canada, this will get sent. Let's see if it changes the response. And it does say you would like more information about Canada. This is good. This is progress. If we wanted to test it out in the developer portal, we can try. This time I put France here. I'll click Ask Country Info, and sure enough, it responds with France. We can actually listen to what it says.
You would like more information about France. I'll look that up for you soon.
How cool is that? We're making progress on our function. What if your country name isn't understood? For example, what if someone says, Alexa, ask country info about Flu Flarm? We need to have a response for that situation. Go back to Visual Studio, and the code for this will be at tinyurl.com/AlexaTalk4. Now we are going to read the country requested, and if it's null, then we know that Alexa didn't understand the country asked. And then we're going to log to CloudWatch, country was not understood, and then we're going to return a skill response of, I'm sorry, but I didn't understand the country you were asking for. Please ask again. The second parameter to make skill response is whether we keep the session open or not. And a session is when you are asking Alexa question after question after question, and she's keeping that same skill open. That's why we're going to return false. You may want to continue asking questions, so false would say keep the session open if we are in a session. Otherwise, we'll just return the country that they requested and we'll look it up for them. Now let's publish it. Go to Solution Explorer, right click on Lambda Alexa, published AWS Lambda. Of course, we are going to use the one we've been using before, almbd-alexa-c#. And because our AWS Lambda tools defaults.json file is filled out, these are already populated. Choose the Lambda basic execution role and upload. And we can test this, of course, in Visual Studio, and to simulate Alexa not understanding the slot value that you passed in. Instead of France, let's just erase that and put the word null, no quotes around it, just null. And once we have that, we can invoke the function, and it takes a while the first time you call it. Jason, pretty print that. I'm sorry, but I didn't understand the country you were asking for. Please ask again. So great, this is working. All right, so let's get into something real interesting, and let's parse the REST service that we're going to call. It's the REST country service from Fader Flores, and you can view his GitHub repo at github.com/fader/REST countries. And I would encourage you to support Fader because it's costing him about 570 euros a year to support this service, and I've really enjoyed using it. It's a great service. Back in Visual Studio, let's edit our function.cs file again, and the code for this now will live at tinyurl.com/AlexaTalk5. So let's go to that URL, tinyurl.com/AlexaTalk5. And again, it's another gist. This is a much larger gist. And before I paste it in, we'll talk roughly what it does. It has some classes here that it's going to use to deserialize the JSON coming back from that REST country service. And then we have a function that will actually return the results or actually fetch the data and deserialize it into the list of country type. And then we have this function, it helps you to get a high quality result from the service and find countries like North Korea or South Korea that don't necessarily have that as their official name. So this is just what that does. You can work out that on your own time. And then we are going to handle that, the response, and tell them the capital of the country. So let's just copy this to your clipboard. And then once you're back in Visual Studio, you can paste the code back in here. And just again to show you when the request comes in, we are going to say if the country was not understood, if we don't get it. However, when we call this get country info, this is what's going to call the REST service, and then we are just going to respond with you'd like more information about, and then the country name, and then say the capital. Just to point out, the service spells the name of capital wrong with an AL. It is actually supposed to be OL, but hey, who's counting? I don't care. I spell it wrong all the time anyway. All right, so that is the main logic here. Let's publish this and go through the publish wizard here. LMBD, Alexa C#. Hit next. Choose the basic execution role, and then I will upload it. And now let's change country to France and invoke it. And we get a response back. It says, you'd like more information about France, the capital is Paris. Oh wow, this is awesome. It's actually parsing the call from the REST service and giving us the capital. That's not hard-coded in our code, as you know. Let's go back to the developer portal so then we can really have fun. And let me ask our service about France, and let's listen to it.
You'd like more information about France. The capital is Paris.
Hey, that is cool. Let's try another country. Let's try Mexico.
You'd like more information about Mexico. The capital is Mexico City.
This is pretty fun. Now you can see the possibilities that you can do when you hook up a REST service with your Alexa skill. So just the capital is cool, but let's add more information. This REST service returns a lot more than just the capital. So if you go to restcountries.eu/v1, you can try out the service to look at what it returns. And here you can see it returns a lot of information. And this is just about France here. One thing you'll notice is it returns things like the demonym, French, the area. I don't even know what genie is, the lat long, and then population. A lot more other things, just the region, calling codes. You can see what an Alexa service or Alexa skill that's based on this REST service will give you a lot of power. So let's return the population of the country in addition to the capital. And so back in our function.cs, it says you'd like information about the capital is. This is a good start. One thing is when you're in a session and you're asking over and over about countries, you don't want a long sentence. So let's actually shorten this a bit. And I'm just going to say about and then the country name. So about France. The capital is, and then in this I'm going to say the population too. So and the population is, and country info dot population. And thanks to the magic of IntelliSense, I knew right away that population and we're spelling it properly. And that's about it. So this is the final state of our skill. I'm going to make sure it's saved and everything. And then I'm going to right click on the project name and we're going to publish to AWS Lambda. And the function name is this Alexa C#. I hit next. And the basic execution role is selected. And let's upload it and see what we get. And so I'm still passing in France. Let me hit invoke. And we get about France, the capital is Paris, and the population is in that number. What's fun is the Alexa service actually will give you a human understandable number. It won't say 66710000. It's actually going to parse it out for us. So let's try that in the service. Here we have about Mexico in here. Let me ask country info about it. And let's listen.
About Mexico. The capital is Mexico City and the population is 122,273,473.
Oh, that is so cool.
About Vietnam. The capital is Hanoi and the population is 92,700,000.
So if you want to actually use this Alexa skill on your Alexa device, you need to publish it. You don't actually have to publish it to the world. You can actually just publish it for your own use, but you still need to go to this publishing information tab. So after you save the settings that you did on the test tab, you can come in here and choose a category. We're going to choose education and reference, and you can leave this blank since we're not going to publish it to the Amazon store for or Alexa skill listing, and then you just can leave the defaults here, but we will give it a short skill description. Country info gives you the ability to ask for country information, and this is going to all show up on your Alexa skill app. And then you can give some skill description, say gives you the capital of a country and also its population. You get the idea. And then you have some sample phrases, and it tells you what you should say. So the first one needs to include Alexa. So Alexa, ask country info about France. And then you might say, and this one you can just say about Mexico, because in a session that's all you need to say. Or you can just say another country, Vietnam. And that will give people an idea on how to use it in the write-up. Keywords, of course, we're not publishing this, but you can get the idea. For a small icon, choose an image that is 108 by 108 and 512 by 512 for your large and big. So here I have a small image that's that meets the requirements, and I just choose it. And then I have one for the large icon, and there we go. And now they're uploaded, and I can hit save. Okay, once you have the skill published in your Amazon portal, and it's logged in the same way that you log into your Alexa app, then you just need to go down to skills and your app, and then click on your skills in the top right, and then you'll actually see your skill enabled here. And if I click on it, you can actually see what I typed into the portal. You can see the picture that I uploaded. You can see the example phrases that I typed in, and you can actually start using it on your device that you have connected and logged in under this account. All right, let's summarize what we learned. We described how Alexa works, and then I showed that a skill is broken into two parts. Then we use Visual Studio to develop a C# Alexa skill service that you can go home and use right now. And then we use the AWS console and the Amazon developer portal to manage the rest. All right, that's it from me. Again, my name is Paul Oliver, and I am the Principal Software Architect at Mosaic, where we unlock insights with video. You can tweet at me at itspaultastic, and I hope this was useful and enjoyable to you. Thank you.